So last time we looked at world religions, and I had mentioned that I was going to be examining spirituality and other forms of religion that are not sort of within the traditional corpus of religions, and how that is part of this globalized world, and how it brings us together, connects us as humanity, with this sort of otherworldly presence. And so, by looking at spirituality, we really have to sort of separate ourselves from formal religious practices, and define spirituality as something that is different than traditional religion. Though within traditional religions, you can certainly have forms of spirituality. So I have suggested here, and this may not be an incredibly authoritative or complex definition, but in my observations and research, I have found that spirituality is about channeling one's inner energy to commune with the divine. Now, we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions. The most important being, well, what is the divine? So, in a kind of easy example, let us suggest that a Christian who never goes to church, never has any affiliation with any other Christians, and sort of just practices the faith quietly in their own home by themselves in sort of a hermetic existence. Is this religion, or is this spirituality? Just sort of they have mystical prayer-like experiences where they sort of adopt the models of the faith, but they don't really participate in any kind of communal religion. I think this is more a spirituality than an actual religion. Now, if we take this another way, like we look at something else, we look at nature, or sort of just or something like a Buddhism, where you're just trying to escape the cares and worries of the world. I think this much more follows in line with spirituality than actual religion. But we have seen in our modern age sort of this highly dedicated group of people who are call themselves environmentalists or climate activists, but they are attached deeply to the earth. That they go out into nature, whatever nature is, and they go out. Let's say they go into Rocky Mountain National Park, and they sit down and they meditate, and they are filled up, that their cares and worries of the world disappear, that they are filled up with the light of the smells and beauty of the nature that is all around them, that there is something sacred about that place to them. This is definitely a form of spirituality. Is it a religion? I think it's so highly individualistic. It can have religious elements to it, but this is really a spirituality where one attempts to commune with the divine, and in this case, the divine the earth itself. We call this pantheism, where the earth itself has become a deity. Now, the deity may not have any animistic qualities, but in a sense, it is divine. It is a living thing that these people have dedicated themselves to and connect with in deeply, highly emotional, spiritual way. Now, this is not the only way to sort of connect with this, as I've cited with an example of sport, where people can sort of connect in a spiritual way with other fans of the sport, and with the team and the victory. There is an element of spirituality within sport, I think, for the highly dedicated and devoted fan. But that's not the only way, right? We can look at something like Buddhism, where the goal is to simply stop the cares of the world within one's own mind, to sort of have this passive existence that it doesn't matter what happens in the world because it's irrelevant. You have eliminated all suffering in your life because you have eliminated all desire. How do you do this? You focus on the divine. You focus on getting rid of all this stuff. You simply focus on peace and serenity. You have to end desire to end suffering. It's a little more complicated than that within Buddhism, but you see my point. To illustrate that spirituality is something that is highly individualistic, and it is an attempt with between a human being to connect with another higher form of emotionalism, or within this sort of spiritual, deep emotional connection. So, within this sort of pantheistic movement that I was discussing, we sort of have this revival or rebirth of what is called Wicca. Some of those more skeptical people would say witchcraft. Well, Wiccans would probably be very insulted at this in some cases, because they are sort of, I don't want to say nature worshippers, but I think definitely a pantheistic label could be thrown upon Wicca. But these are people who care about the earth. They are people who want to channel the energies of the earth, of objects, and they believe that this can be manifest through a sort of primitive form of religion that comes out of pre-Christian religions or pre-monotheistic religions, that traditional pagan beliefs, which were highly localized. There would be that there would be herbs and various medicines and spells, words that can be said that would make something turn from something normal to something magical or supernatural, simply by invoking certain incantations, and doing certain rituals, that where you channel the spirits and the powers of the earth, of your ancestors. And this is a highly popular religion because of the individualistic nature of it. I think all religion is in at least within Western spaces, Western world, is becoming more individualistic, because society is becoming more individualistic than in previous generations. And that's why religions, as we see within evangelical Christianity, we see those who don't identify with a particular church or creed. They just simply kind of want to believe what they want to believe, what's good for them. And within Wicca practicing, we see this as well, that it's a highly localized. You can be part of a coven or a group that practices the religion, or you can just simply do it on your own. And there's not any hierarchy. It's just simply individualistic spirituality, where the individual is trying to commune with another force outside of themselves, whether that be nature, whether that be some sort of a god or goddess, whether that be some element within spirituality. So I really talked about this, I think, earlier. I should have put this slide earlier. But within this belief in pantheism, and we can also call this lived religion, that within humanity, Mircea Eliade would argue that there is this desire to connect with a higher being, that all people are in some way religious, or not necessarily a higher being, but a higher rationality, a higher spirituality. And whether that be nature, as we see exhibited in many cases in our own society, as we see through environmental activism. John Muir, the famous poet of the Sierra Nevada Valley, writes about this. But this naturalism is transformed. Muir tells us that when he sets in Hetch Hetchy Valley, which is right in the Sierra Nevada mountain range there, near San Francisco. And he describes this as being in a cathedral, that this was his cathedral. This is where he felt closest to the divine, to the presence of God. It was never in a church or any religious ceremony. It was simply communing with nature. That this is how Muir channeled his psychology, his emotions, and this is what filled him up. And many people can empathize with this as we work within our cramped offices and urban environments. That this release into nature, pantheism, it really becomes what's so important. So that's why you see the explosion of these sort of Greenpeace activism movements, and a earnest desire to save the climate, because it is part of this spirituality. That is a desire that we are all connected together within this environment, that the world is a living entity, and if we don't protect this, then we will lose it. And this is what nature is. It is this connectivity on a global level, that we are all part of the world, that we all need the world to live. And so within some element of this, we all have to sort of have this spirituality, this connection with nature, and a value for it, that we can commune with one another through the protection of nature. So this can be termed lived religion or spirituality. And we can also see a manifestation of spirituality within these kind of social justice movements, that there are people who are so dedicated to the causes of social justice within our own society that it almost becomes quasi-religious. That if one were to hold an opinion that were different from an accepted belief regarding a social justice movement, that this, in a sense, would become a heresy, and the person who voiced this opinion would become a heretic, and someone to be thrown out of the society. That is, it is beyond their ability, or beyond the realm of acceptance. That if you would challenge a position within this sort of accepted core of beliefs within a social justice movement, that some of these people would say that or practitioners of the particular movement would simply say, then you're a bigot, and you're just simply not part of our group. So in a way, it is to show that this takes on almost a quasi-religious element, in the same way that if you would express a view that would be absolutely rebuff the Christian doctrines, that you have to be removed from the body of Christians. In the same way within some social justice causes, similar views are suggested. So I hope that this brief lecture on spirituality has sort of opened some channels of thinking of how the world is interconnected, and how spirituality and religion are part of a global network of beliefs, of psychology, of sort of spirituality, phenomenalism, and how how pantheism, environmental activism, and nature religions have come to bring the world closer together and unite causes of conservation for the preservation of the world. And we will talk more about that when we discuss environmentalism. But this is just simply to show that religion and spirituality are absolutely part of this globalized network of worlds, and play an essential part within the connectivity of this globalized world. So, gang, thanks for watching. And until next time, stay healthy.